Wild Mystery Podcast appears, where we discuss mysteries, histories, and occasionally conspiracies. I'm your host, Ollie.
And I'm your co-host, Belle.
Today, we'll be discussing the disappearance of Sage Smith, a 19-year-old aspiring hairdresser in 2012 in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Today's trigger warnings are poverty, foster care, custody, homophobia, transphobia, disappearance, hate crimes, and murder.
Got a big old list of them.
The opinions expressed in this podcast are the sole views and opinions of Belle and Ollie with a Wild Mystery Podcast appears. These views are not intended to harm, offend, defame, slander, or negatively represent any individuals involved in a case.
So there is, as usual, some funkiness with all of the sources here, but mainly the thing is that there is a lot of stuff about this disappearance nowadays. Not so much when she originally went missing. So we'll be chatting about that, but you can probably guess based on those trigger warnings where that's going. But I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that the timeline, especially in some of the stuff with that, is a little weird because a lot of it wasn't reported until fairly recently.
Love that.
Yep. So, Sage Smith was born December 13th, 1992 as Deshad LaQuinn Smith. Usually I would not mention...
dead name?
Yes, but lots of media outlets and her family a lot of times refer to her with he, him pronouns and as Deshad. So I wanted to mention that because a lot of, in a lot of the sources that I'm linking, that's how they're going to be referring to her. And I'm trying not to be too judgmental, because she had come out as trans literally a couple of weeks before she went missing. So.
Okay. Okay, you can tell where I was going, because I was like,
yeah.
Motherfuckers switched up, but okay. Not to say that it's okay, but that it was a very recent change for them.
And reportedly,
and also this was in
2012.
A lot of trans media still wasn't being as polite.
Yeah, whereas you look at Elliot Page, I think, is the person who most recently came out and the media, all switched there was no misgendering at all. And I was thrilled and also shocked.
Yeah.
Because that's not how it usually goes.
The other one was Demi Lovato.
Yeah. Yeah, that happened pretty quickly too.
Yeah. For them,
yeah. Anyway,
There's actually several.
Yeah.
But again, they're also
But that is also very, very recently. Yeah.
Yes.
But,
and they're also celebrities.
And I'm basically, we're going to get into her coming out and stuff, but basically what you need to know is that it was a very, very recent thing. And she was clear to people that she wanted to be referred to as Sage and as she, her pronouns. But she also was reportedly also comfortable with presenting male. Okay. And wasn't, it was a transitionary period.
I mean, she was young. She was figuring out herself.
Yep. But we'll get into that in just a second, actually.
Perfect.
But I did definitely want to mention that, I think on the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, she says Deshad. On the Charlie Project, they say Deshad. So I didn't want to not mention that name.
Gotcha.
So, Sage struggled in school, but she still graduated from Charlottesville High School, the first in her family to graduate high school.
Good for her.
And her family was really, really close and also had experienced extreme poverty, which in a lot of ways, a lot of those struggles sometimes bring people together, sometimes tear people apart.
Yep.
In her family's case, it took a while, I guess, but it ended up bringing them super, super close together. So her grandmother, Lolita Smith, or Miss Cookie, I think I usually refer to her as Miss Cookie because that's kind of how she was referred to by family.
Yeah. Which is just adorable.
It is, yes.
Love that.
So Miss Cookie was especially close to Sage, who was the oldest of her 14 grandchildren. And she'd actually raised Sage for 5 years since she was 3.
Wow.
Yeah. And Sage briefly returned to her mother, Latasha Dennis's care. At one point in her childhood, it was kind of, I couldn't really figure out when. But then her mother was deemed unfit to care for her, and she went into foster care. Her father's name is Dean. They had a complicated relationship, but they were actually actively working to repair it. And she would call him and Miss Cookie pretty much every day. She had obviously a large family, but 2 people that come up pretty frequently, or, you know, at times during this case, are her sister, I'm so sorry, Iana Langston? Yeah, I thought so.
That's what I would go with.
Yeah. And her step-sister, Kiara. Miss Cookie was one of the first people that Sage came out to as a gay male, but she quickly realized that didn't quite feel right. Miss Cookie was also one of the first people that she came out to as trans, and she responded by saying it wasn't anything she didn't already know, which is comforting, I would say.
Yeah. I don't know. I've heard mixed reviews on it.
Yeah, but for me, I think it would be comforting.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like coming out to like grandparents.
Yeah.
I think it's like almost a level harder than your parents because it's like they're typically older with even more traditional values. Mm-hmm. So like that can be a difficult thing.
Yeah.
So, but I agree with you. I think in this context, I feel she probably was comforted by that fact.
Mm-hmm. So she had been out to friends and family as trans for a little while, but on November 9th, 2012, she changed her gender on Facebook, including with it a post, quote, "I am a girl now, #respect it," end quote. Yeah. So in November of 2012, she was 19 years old, working at a hair salon, braiding her friend's hair at home, and taking cosmetology classes at the University of Virginia, studying to become a professional hairdresser. She had recently gotten public assistance to move into an apartment and lived there with 2 roommates, Aubrey Carson and Shakira Washington. The apartment had painted pink walls, which earned it the nickname the Dollhouse Mansion. And Shakira had been a close friend since they were preteens, and I had this wasn't mentioned in all sources, but some people say that Aubrey may have also been a childhood friend of hers, but I can't be 100% sure.
Okay.
So together, these 3 enjoyed going out to parties, many of which were the same parties that closeted gay men frequented. So Sage, Aubrey, and Shakira would also occasionally hook up with people, as most people around that age do.
Yep.
For fun or for money. They always, though, stayed safe by keeping each other in the loop and updated. For instance, Shakira recalled a time that a professor invited her over to his house, which... pause for the red flags to set in there. And when the man left the room for a second, Sage revealed that she was lurking in the bushes outside the window to make sure that she was safe.
Right on.
Yeah. So despite this, Sage actually would post casual encounters ads on Craigslist, which her friends were kind of sketched out by. So she was described, was described as a protector of her friends, energetic, outgoing, colorful, caring, resilient. She had a smile that would light up a room, was always trying to help the underdog. She was African American, had brown eyes, was 5'8" to 5'11", and about 130 pounds. She had long black hair, which she often wore in braids, but she also wore wigs, one of which was red. I don't think that was missing from the apartment. I think it was in the apartment when she went missing, so I don't know why sources
are so specific
mention that.
About that.
But so she was reportedly comfortable in both men and women's clothing. She had her ears and nipples pierced, and also the right question mark side of her bottom lip and left question mark side, left question mark eyebrow. And I'm confused about this because none of the sources specifically said which side, and I'm worried that somebody could have flipped the photos, but in the photos, it appears like her right bottom lip and her left eyebrow are pierced.
Gotcha.
She once helped an older man carry his groceries to his car while in 3-inch heels and a miniskirt.
Right on.
Yeah. And she was just, like, no one had really anything bad to say about this woman. She was just very loved by her friends, by her families, by the LGBT community, you know.
Yeah.
And with that, we're going to take a quick ad break before we get into her disappearance. On the morning of November 20th, 2012, Sage called her father, Dean, to congratulate him on his anniversary of being released from jail. And they had a conversation. She, at one point, asked him for some money. Depending on the source, it was either to get her hair braided or to go towards a new TV for their apartment. Or for her apartment, I mean.
Gotcha.
Basically, everyone that she interacted with said that she was in a really good mood. She was excited for Thanksgiving, which was the next day. Yeah, the next day. It was planning on traveling to surprise her stepsisters and was also looking forward to seeing her mother's new house. Obviously, this is a close family, so Thanksgiving would be a big deal.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the concept.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
So, later on that day, she got ready for a date that she was having. Put on a black jacket, dark gray sweatpants, a black scarf, gray and black rain boots with pink and purple lining, and also may have been wearing a bleached sweatshirt. At around 5:40 p.m., she woke up Aubrey, one of her roommates, who was napping on the couch in the living room, and told her she was leaving for her date and was going to be near the Amtrak station on Main Street and would be back later. At around 6:30 p.m., Kiara, her stepsister, sees Sage on the 500 block of West Main Street near the Amtrak station that she had mentioned to Aubrey. At the time, Sage was on the phone with someone, and Kiara heard somebody on the other line ask where she was, and Sage said she was on her way. At about 7 p.m., an acquaintance of Sage named Monica sees her alone at a Wild Wings cafe, which shared the same building as the Amtrak station, but no longer exists today. They had a brief conversation. Sage said she was meeting somebody, but she was still alone when Monica left. At about 8 p.m., Aubrey woke up. The house was dark and quiet, and she was immediately worried because she believed that Sage would have been home by then. That was supposed to be that sentence, but I moved it.
Gotcha.
So, I wanted to quickly mention, Aubrey was another person that she's also trans and goes by she, her pronouns, but will sometimes be referred to by he, him pronouns. So, just quick note. So she called Sage, and went straight to voicemail, which was weird because Sage was the kind of person who always answered her phone, but she also, like most of us, always carried a charger. So it was weird for her to have her phone off or dead. So again, she was immediately worried. On November 21st, the next day, Aubrey realizes that Sage still isn't home. You know, up until then, she had probably had been trying to rationalize, like, well, it's only 8 p.m. and she left at like 6, so maybe she's staying out later than I realized, and, you know, maybe her phone did die, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all want to believe that things...
Yeah.
And especially, I would say, as a black person, calling the police is probably not something you want to do.
Yeah.
But on November 21st, the next day, Aubrey realizes that Sage still isn't home. Again, tries to call her and she doesn't answer. And at that point, she calls Miss Cookie, who was worried and told her it was really weird for Sage not to answer her phone because she was glued to it and always carried a charger. So she told her to call the police. And Aubrey did. She said the officer sounded calm, asked for Sage's name, birth date, a picture, and nothing else. As in,
Shocker.
like, what I took that to mean is, like, no details. No, where was she last seen? Although, I think she actually did tell them when she was last seen, which, because we'll get to that later, but...
Yeah. I get you.
Yeah. As the day wore on, her family and friends got more and more worried. It was really, really weird for her to not have any contact with anybody for over 24 hours. And when she missed Thanksgiving dinner with her family, they reported her missing because they saw no reason why she would willingly miss Thanksgiving. Social media blew up about her disappearance, but friends and family say it took a while for news and police to catch up.
Shocker.
Yeah. So the investigation was performed by Charlottesville Police Department, who later on also worked with state and federal law enforcement. They apparently began investigating the same day of the call, that being November 21st, and they subpoenaed Sage's phone records, but knew it would take a while, and initially her case was classified as a missing persons case. The rest of the family kind of slowly discovered Sage was missing. It was a pretty big family from what I've heard. So her sisters actually found out from a Facebook post before their mother could call them. The family put out flyers looking for witnesses, and they were also able to guess her phone password and get access to her record, or the phone records. Which, to be clear, I'm pretty sure that they didn't have her phone. I'm pretty sure Sage took her phone with her. I think it was just that because they had her password, they were able to get access to the records. So they discovered that the last call was to an out-of-state number that they didn't recognize. So Dean, her father, posted this number to Facebook asking if anybody recognized it. And Yami Ortiz, a trans woman who moved in the same circles as Sage, DM'd him to tell him that it belonged to Erik McFadden, someone that Sage had been seeing, but Erik, quote, wasn't out, end quote, and also had a girlfriend. And just a quick note about the whole wasn't out thing, I don't like that wording, because Sage was a woman, so he didn't really have any reason to be out.
Yeah.
But I think he just saw it as, McFadden saw it as something that he needed to come out about. And also he was cheating on his girlfriend. That was probably the main reason that they didn't want to keep, or that he didn't want their relationship out there.
Yeah.
So Dean also posted a photo of McFadden to Facebook asking if anybody who had seen him could contact him. Anybody who had seen McFadden to contact Dean. After this, Yami went to the police to also tell them what she knew about McFadden. So let's talk about Erik Taekwon McFadden. He was 21 at the time of Sage's disappearance. He had brown eyes, black hair, was 5'10 to 6'1", 150 to 190 pounds, mixed race, African-American, and Caucasian. He attended Lincoln University in Oxford, Pennsylvania from August of 2009 to April of 2011. And at the time, he lived in Charlottesville and had a job at a Sherwin-Williams paint store.
Okay.
Police believe that he met Sage through one of the casual encounters ads on Craigslist, and he was the last known person to have contact with her. They had been texting and calling for weeks and had met in person before, but he had a girlfriend, and according to some sources, Sage had accepted money in exchange for keeping herself secret from said girlfriend. Again, I have no way to confirm this. On November 24th, 6 officers conducted a grid search of the area Sage was last seen in. They checked trash cans, dumpsters, open lots, parking lots, fields, and the University of Virginia campus. No businesses had surveillance cameras. They only got a traffic camera, which if you don't know, only monitors, doesn't record.
Yeah.
So basically the only reason that they would have caught her on that is if somebody had been like running a red light as she walked by.
Right.
Or if she ran the red light, but she wasn't in a car. So the local landfill at some point was also searched with forensic and hazmat teams, police dogs, and a retired agent with knowledge of landfill searches. All of these searches came up empty. Again, on November 24th, Esther, who is Erik McFadden's girlfriend, or was, called police to ask them to do a welfare check on him because he was missing. She tells them that he abruptly left town on the 23rd, and she'd been calling him all day and hadn't received an answer. I'm pretty sure that they lived together. The wording made it hard to tell for sure. So police visited the apartment, and McFadden wasn't home. Esther agreed to a thorough search of the apartment, which I'm pretty sure she owned.
Yeah.
And the police department turned up a CVS receipt dated November 22nd. CCTV from this CVS confirmed it was McFadden. The police also learned that he had not been to work in 3 days. On November 25th, Erik McFadden himself calls his girlfriend, saying he is in DC and needs her to send him money. She tells him that the Charlottesville Police Department, CPD, are looking for him and passed along investigators' information. When police received Sage's phone records, they confirmed that the last person she spoke to and texted was Erik McFadden. They texted on and off from 5:17 to 5:40, and the last time she texted him was at 6:37 to tell him she was on a call with a friend and would see him soon. Now, this is weird to me because I always kind of thought that the call that she was on when Kiara saw her at around 6:30 was with him.
Yeah.
But at 6:37, why would she tell him that she was on a call with somebody else if it was him? So I'm not 100% sure that that call she was on when Kiara saw her was with him.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe Kiara's estimate of the time was a little later than it actually was. I'm not sure. But I don't know. So warrants were obtained for McFadden's computer, bank records, social media accounts, etc., but nothing was found. On November 27th, McFadden calls CPD. He said he was in New York because he had always wanted to go there. Red flag number, what are we on now, do you think? Like 50?
You know what? There's several.
Yeah.
There's several.
Yeah. So he was asked about his relationship with Sage, and he said that they had had a sexual relationship, but he wasn't out to anybody. Frankly, they were in a sexual relationship, but he had a girlfriend. Yeah. Sorry, Belle is copy and pasting my red flag emoji to the other places where it belongs.
Yeah.
So he also said that Sage never showed for their date and he didn't know what happened to her. Police said that he should return to Virginia and he hung up on them.
Red flag.
Number 51 is that now? So on November 29th, Esther calls CPD again. She said that McFadden told her he was taking a bus to Charlottesville and expected CPD to pick him up, gave her a time basically that he'd arrive, and she gave it to them. Now, in other sources, this is said that McFadden called CPD and told them this. This, again, there's some weird timeline shit in this, like just inconsistencies with who did what and what, but basically, McFadden said that he was coming back, he was taking a bus back to Charlottesville and gave CPD a time that they could pick him up. On November 30th, though, she calls back and said that McFadden had changed his mind.
Red flag.
He sent her an email saying that Sage had been blackmailing him, threatening to tell his girlfriend, that they'd had sex. In this version, he said that he did meet with Sage, but didn't know what happened, and also that she had a lot of enemies. We got lots of red flags going in this document.
Sorry. I'm not trying to make, like, it's obviously, it's not a joke, but it's like, there's just...
At some point you kind of, like...
so...
The absolute cartoonishness of how this is going up until this point.
Yes.
That, like...
I would agree
we're
with
talking
that
about
phrasing.
this because it's a mystery, because it's unsolved. But is it, though?
Yeah.
Like...
It kind of makes me think back, like, to the Karen
Horman, yeah.
case, because it's like, well,
Yeah.
we know, but
like, we probably are fairly certain that we know what happened.
We have reasonable belief.
Yeah.
Just not enough for a jury to convict.
Yeah. So at some point, I couldn't really figure out where in all of this happened, but at some point, Esther showed up in person to the station. She said that McFadden had emailed saying that Sage did show up, that they walked around a bit, but then some other people showed up and he dipped because she had enemies, and he was scared. He also apparently said that she had blackmailed other men before. And while we're talking about all of this, I want to quickly say that, like, I never heard any of the blackmail stuff from any of her friends, you know?
Yeah. I mean...
None of that is ever sourced. Like, they talk about how, yeah, they did occasionally accept money for sex. But none of them ever talk about blackmailing, you know?
Yeah, I just am thinking, like... I don't know. If they were honest about the fact that they did accept money for sex, I think that they would be pretty honest about being like, you know, whether or not they admitted that they had blackmailed men, maybe they would be honest and say, because here's my opinion on it. They would want it solved. Whether or not they agreed with the fact that she did it, if she had done it, they would probably tell them so that they could investigate those people. And also, food for thought, they probably would have found evidence indicative of the fact that she was blackmailing them.
But this is really, the blackmail mainly comes from
McFadden,
yeah.
Yeah, because he's trying to CYA.
Yeah. There was another man that Sage had been seeing in the past who is vaguely related here. Basically, this man's girlfriend had discovered emails between him and Sage. The dude blamed Sage for everything and was aggressive towards her after this. One night, he assaulted her while she was walking home, and charges were brought against him, but he was incarcerated at the time of her disappearance, so he was not a suspect. But what I will say in all, like, this whole story, blackmail isn't brought up.
Yeah.
The dude's girlfriend discovers the emails, and this is all about cheating. It's not about...
Yeah, it's all about infidelity. But it also, I'm just irritated, you know. Well, you know, I blame you. And...
Yeah, I mean, it is nobody's fault that you are doing a shitty thing, except yourself.
Yeah.
McFadden is. Sorry, I'm wondering about the tense I should use here, but I'm pretty sure is a critical person of interest in this case. Detectives believe that he had or has info that could help solve the case. On December 3rd, 2012, police received information that either her credit card or food stamps card, depending on the source, was used. CCTV at a convenience store revealed Aubrey was using it. She said that she and Sage were very close and often used each other's stuff, so she used it to buy groceries. Sage's family and Shakira, though, reportedly thought it was really, really weird. Nothing else, though, suggests that Aubrey was involved. On February 23rd, 2013, this is when Monica came forward with the statement that she had seen Sage at the Wild Wings Cafe. Unfortunately, the cafe didn't have CCTV, and the other customers that were questioned couldn't remember if they saw Sage, which, kind of sucks. But in May 2013 was the last contact of anybody, last confirmed contact from Erik McFadden to anybody when he emailed his girlfriend from an untraceable email address. I'm not sure what that means, but, here we are.
Yeah.
So in 2014, CPD got a warrant for access to McFadden's email and phone records. And in November of 2015, CPD ruled McFadden out as a suspect because he had no means of getting rid of a body. He had no car and was living in a shared apartment that belonged to somebody else. Now, quickly let me mention, they were at an Amtrak station.
Mm-hmm.
So no car? Like, are we serious? But anyway.
I know damn well that registered my sigh.
Mm-hmm. I honestly wonder if they just said that so, to try and bait him into coming out, make him feel safe.
Yeah, coming out of the woodwork.
But anyway.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah. So in January of 2016, CPD received a call reporting a sighting of Sage in Shakti, Virginia, about 300 miles from Charlottesville. It turned out to be Shakira, who, depending on the source, may have been wearing one of Sage's lockets and claimed it was from her boyfriend. She told CPD that Aubrey had been using Sage's things, including her wigs and credit card, and found her behavior odd. Kiara, at this point, also told CPD that Aubrey had been jealous of Sage. But Shakira also later backtracked on this and said that maybe she had overreacted and Aubrey and Sage were really close, so maybe her behavior wasn't really that strange. My thoughts here is that I don't necessarily think that borrowing her things is suspicious. I think that it might be indicative of grief.
Yeah.
Because especially if they couldn't accept that anything bad had really happened to her, why would anything need to change,
Either that or, potential, connection.
Yeah, connection
something to connect them to her to kind of help that grief.
Yeah.
Because at this point, it's been 4 years.
Yeah. And especially all the, the only thing that I would think is really crossing a line is Aubrey using her food card, her credit card or food stamps card. But at that point, if it was food stamps, I mean, it's still fraud. Yeah. It's still legal. Yeah. But it's especially, possible to me if it was her food stamps that maybe it was just, I don't have money right now. Wallet. I need food. Yeah.
And it could have just, been in her wallet because that was only occurred less than 15 days after she disappeared. Mm-hmm. So it'd be different if she was trying to use her credit card. Yeah.
And I also think that, we have tiny suspicion from Aubrey and Shakira. We have big suspicion from somebody else. Yes. Can you name them? Anyway.
Sorry. Dora the Explorer.
Big red flag.
Kind of shit. It's can you say suspect?
So in December 2016, unfortunately, the investigation was changed from a missing persons case to a homicide investigation.
Basically
4 years, essentially.
No, sorry, I just read ahead, and I didn't mean to read ahead because it's I was scrolling down, so I kept on the top, and it was just kind of hard to not see that.
Yeah,
so
and this is all.
Ignore that for a second. So, but my question was going to be, they changed it to a homicide due to the fact that she had been missing for 4 years, and that they had reasonable suspicion at that time that it was no longer a missing persons case, but was a homicide, just due to the fact that there had been no evidence of her being found, not due to the fact
Yeah.
that they found evidence indicating that she was dead.
They have not found a body. They have not found her.
Yeah.
They have not found, it was just
I
either they had some information that led them to believe, like, some evidence that was without a doubt this is a homicide, or they suspect at this point that it's a homicide and needs to be approached from a different angle. Whatever the case is, I think at this point, I kind of feel like, based on some of her family's, like what they've said, what her family and friends have said, I kind of feel like they saw it coming, which sucks. But,
Yeah.
In March of 2017, McFadden was once again considered as a suspect, but was not charged with anything. And to this day has not been charged with anything. On June 26, 2019, CPD files a missing persons report for McFadden at the request of his mother. He had been missing, obviously, since he left Charlottesville on November 23rd, 2019. But his mother, Denise, said that she didn't realize that he was missing until 2014 because his father had never told her and wouldn't return her request to speak to him. Her request to speak to his father, I believe. She also believed that he had filed a missing persons report until she met with detectives in 2019, which they were interviewing her to see if she knew anything about McFadden's relationship with Sage. But she also says that if he is out there and needs help, he can always call his mom. Which I mainly wanted to mention in case he does listen, but I kind of doubt it. And if he does, he probably hasn't reached this point. Detectives believe that he could be in Maryland, in Baltimore or Joppa, in South Carolina, in Lake City or Columbia, in Atlanta, Georgia, in New York City or Rochester, or other places on the West Coast. They have checked leads in some of these places with no major developments. Erik's mom and stepmother haven't heard from him since 2012, and they both believe that he could be dead. And I also want to mention here that some people wonder why McFadden would run if he was innocent, but some other people say because his information was leaked on social media. And he, quote, wasn't out and just didn't want to deal with the aftermath.
So, hold on. I just want to look at the timeline or something.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, frankly, I would say I think that I agree with his mom's that it is likely that he's no longer alive.
I think that is highly possible. So...
Because for him to not email anybody after May of 2013, when he'd been calling and emailing his girlfriend up until then.
Yeah.
No word to any of his family.
Yeah.
When it seems like he had been, sporadically communicating to them, even if he'd been lying to them, was still communicating with them.
Right. I mean, he could potentially just be a John Doe that, died somewhere. I was just looking back on the timeline to see, because I was like, well, when did Sage's father post?
Yeah, I wasn't...
Disappearance. That was on the 21st.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was on the 21st.
So that was just, I was trying to line up that timeline for my own brain, because they're saying missing since November 23rd, and it
could have been the 22nd, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, around then that Dean posted it, because, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And Dean, by the way, he has said that he posted it because he didn't feel that CPD was doing anything to help his daughter.
No, and I feel that. Definitely. I hope that my family would do that for me if the cops aren't doing anything.
All these visual cues.
So,
On November 20th, 2020, there was a press release where CPD said, mentioned unspecified recent developments in the case. And at some point, Emma Eisenberg, was a journalist, found messages on Sage's Facebook from March of 2012 telling her to, quote, watch her back, end quote, because people on the street had unfinished business with her. Reportedly because she had contacted the wife of a man she'd been seeing at some point. I'm putting a lot of reportedlys in here because we cannot confirm any of this shit.
Uncorroborated.
Yep. So her case, it is hard to say that the police have not been doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are times when the police just keeps everything really close to the vest, and maybe they have done tons and we just don't realize.
Right.
It is less tough to say that her case has received not as much attention from the media as others in the area, especially cis white victims. The family believes that her race and gender/sexuality is the reason that her case hasn't received as much attention, which I've got to agree with them on.
Is not uncommon.
Yes, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what to say about that other than, like, her family has noticed that other cases, of cis white victims have received more attention. And I think they try really hard not to be bitter about it, but I think it would be really hard not to feel bitter watching strangers help another family
mm-hmm.
and not help yours.
Yeah.
When, of course, they've all said, we want nothing but the best. We hope that, whoever turns up fine. They've been there. They want nothing for the but these best for these families. It's just, I think, really hard to see an energy for somebody else's case that you didn't see for your family's case. Yeah. So with that, on that depressing note, we're going to take our final ad break. So, Sage would be 30 today, and McFadden would be 31 if they are still alive. Both are classified as endangered missing. There is a $20,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest or the location of Sage. $10,000 of that is from Crime Stoppers, and then the other $10,000 is a match from the city of Charlottesville. Family and friends are obviously devastated by Sage's disappearance. Latasha, her mother, in 2019 said, quote, "This is a loss that is different from other losses because there is no closure. It's like you can't finish grieving. It's a continuance, untied feeling that hits me," end quote. Iana, her sister, says that with every milestone she reaches, she wishes that Sage was there for it. Dean, her father, hasn't changed his phone number since Sage's disappearance, despite changing it frequently before.
Yeah, that's depressing.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, as one article I read said.
Yeah, no, that's,
So,
yeah.
CPD said in November of 2020, quote, "CPD is hopeful with the help of the media and continued public interest, we can finally solve this case and bring closure to a family and community that continues to experience anguish," end quote. So, also going to mention some quick stats here. In 2021, 40% of missing juveniles were people of color, despite making up only 13% of the total population. Only 1/5 of missing person of color child cases were followed by the media in 2018. The Black and Missing Foundation, that's where I got those stats. One of their co-founders is Natalie Wilson, who worked with the Smith family at some point. And Natalie Wilson has said that the police more often classify marginalized children as runaways over victims of crimes, but the reverse is true for white children. Which is, it means that different resources go to the case.
Yes.
Than potentially are needed.
Yeah. Stereotyping is bad. Stop fucking doing it.
Mm-hmm. So, Amy Sarah Marshall, a president of the Charlottesville Pride and organizer of September Pride Festival in 2013, said, quote, "There's a general dismissive attitude towards Sage's disappearance. We want to make sure this gets as much attention and value from the community as a whole as any other disappearance would," end quote. Kenneth Jackson, Sage's cousin, also said, quote, "There are people who may know things who aren't willing to go to the police station," end quote. Which, again, I'm putting that in mainly to pimp out our contact form on our site. I mean, not to pimp it out, that sounds, but like to be like, this is another case where if you don't feel comfortable calling investigators, send us a tip. We will pass it on. So it is, like I mentioned before, it's tough to tell whether or not the police have been slacking on this one. Tim Longo, the police chief in 2013, said, quote, "Where we are in the process, we're really not in a position to share. And that silence, which has meaning and purpose, can sometimes be perceived as disinterest in an action. That couldn't be further from the truth," end quote. So in this one especially, I feel like obviously the family has been closer to the investigation than I have. But really, I think I've been seeing less about police's disinterest than I've been seeing about media's disinterest.
Yeah.
And like I said, at the time, there are like no resources. Social media blew up, media crickets. But nowadays there are more articles. And frankly, most of them are like true crime websites, like us.
Yeah.
Like I know Kendall Ray, I think, did a video on Sage. Yes, she did. Lots of YouTubers have, and I highly recommend going and checking them out. Kendall Ray, I know, does a lot to support families. We don't necessarily have those resources at this point yet, but I've always been a massive fan of Kendall Ray because she does so much to help, directly help the families. Mm-hmm. But, as much as it is tough to tell whether the police have been disinterested, it is not hard to tell that the media has been disinterested. So to conclude, Huffington Post contributor Daryl C. Hannah said in 2012, quote, "To call the mainstream media's silence on Sage Smith's story deafening would be an understatement. Really, it's bigger. That someone's son or daughter, trans-identified or not, can go missing from their family for nearly 20 days and there be no national or even local outcry is more than enraging. It's terrifying," end quote.
Very well said.
Yeah. I could not have put it better myself. So, if you do want to reach the Charlottesville Police Department, you can reach them at 434-970-3280 or their tip line at 434-970-3381. You can reach the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, on which you can remain anonymous, at 1-800-843-5678. Or Crime Stoppers, again, you can remain anonymous at 434-977-4000.
And again, you can also report to awmpa.com, and we will pass it on any or the tips that you have.
Mm-hmm. Additionally, I'll be posting a lot of resources in the description that have tip line things. I know that the one on NCMEC, I'm pretty sure, that allows you to stay anonymous. The one on NAMUS, I'm pretty sure, has one that you can remain anonymous. There are a lot of those where you can remain anonymous through the tip lines in the links. So you can head there as well if you hate phone calls.
again, this is one of those cases where my heart truly goes out to the family, because nothing like this is ever easy, but then having the barriers that the media put in addition to that, it's just so wholly unnecessary for those barriers to exist.
Yeah.
And it makes me really frustrated, and I can't even imagine how frustrated it makes
You can
Sage's
say
family,
pissed off,
or
it makes me mad.
oh yeah, no, it's like how I'm talking now is very structured because of quiet rage.
Yes, and there are people out there, you're gonna know who I'm talking about when I say this. There are people out there who will say that regardless of your race or your gender identity or anything, you get all of the same shit. They will say, they'll get mad at you for saying that there is a disparity in the way that people are treated.
Yep.
And those people don't...
One, they're fucking wrong.
They're idiots.
Tone deaf.
And how
and they aren't paying attention.
No. Yeah, they're not paying attention. That's... Yeah.
So just... if you listen to this, the whole episode...
There are always... everybody who is, interested in true crime, who finds this stuff interesting, we all have a handful of cases that we would be thrilled to see solved before we die.
Yeah.
And Sage's case is absolutely one of those cases for me. And frankly, I get the feeling that the police kind of know what happened, and that everybody kind of knows what happened.
Yeah.
It's just hard to prove it.
Yeah, without the physical evidence.
Mm-hmm. But this has been the case of Sage Smith, the disappearance of a 19-year-old aspiring hairdresser in 2012 in Charlottesville, Virginia. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Wild Mystery Podcast Appears, recorded and produced by Ollie and Belle.
Please check out all of our social media where we have additional information shared. You can find all of those links at our website at awmpa.com.
We'd love to hear your feedback for our podcast, so be sure to rate and review.
Tune in next week for another episode of A Wild Mystery Podcast Appears.